The most dangerous investigations don't begin with sirens. They begin with someone believing no one is watching. The July heat settled over Jackson, Mississippi like a heavy blanket, pressing against brick storefronts and shimmering across the cracked pavement. By 8 o'clock, Maple Avenue was already awake. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from a small cafe across the street. An elderly man swept dust from the sidewalk outside his barber shop. Children laughed as they hurried toward a nearby summer program, their backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. It looked like an ordinary neighborhood trying its best to survive another ordinary day. At the corner stood Carter's Market. It wasn't the biggest store in the district. The paint on the wooden sign had begun to fade years ago, and the automatic door gave a tired buzz every time it opened. Yet somehow, everyone who lived within a dozen blocks eventually found themselves inside its aisles. Some came for groceries. Others came simply because the man behind the counter always remembered their names. Marcus Carter greeted every customer with the same calm smile. A young mother walked in carrying a restless toddler. "Morning, Miss Evelyn. You remembered my son's birthday?" Marcus reached beneath the counter and handed the little boy a chocolate bar. "I remember the important things." The mother smiled, unaware that the security monitors mounted quietly above every aisle captured far more than customers searching for cereal and milk. Outside, a black sedan rolled slowly down Maple Avenue. Conversations faded. The barber lowered his eyes. The cafe owner quietly stepped back inside. Even the children instinctively moved closer to the sidewalk. Nobody needed to ask who had arrived. Officer Daniel Brooks climbed out of the patrol vehicle with the relaxed confidence of someone who believed the entire street belonged to him. His polished boots struck the pavement one deliberate step at a time. His badge reflected the bright morning sun, while mirrored sunglasses concealed eyes that rarely looked at people with anything resembling respect. For Daniel, Maple Avenue wasn't part of his patrol route. It was his collection route. Every Thursday, without fail, he strolled past 3 stores before stopping in front of Carter's Market. The small bell above the entrance chimed as he pushed the door open. Silence followed him inside. Marcus looked up from arranging fruit near the register. "Good morning, officer." Daniel smirked. "Funny." Marcus waited. "I don't remember giving you permission to have a good morning." A nervous customer quietly abandoned her shopping basket and slipped outside. Daniel watched her leave before turning back toward Marcus. "You know why I'm here." Marcus folded a receipt with slow, careful movements. "I know you visit every Thursday. I like predictable people." "So do I." The answer lingered in the air longer than either man expected. Daniel's smile disappeared. "You think you're clever." "No. You think because you smile at everyone around here, they'll protect you?" Marcus gently straightened a row of canned vegetables without raising his voice. "They're customers. They're witnesses." Daniel leaned against the counter. "They watch. They stay quiet. They know how this neighborhood works." His fingers tapped twice against the wooden countertop. "So let's save each other some time." He extended one hand. "You've had a profitable month. I think it's time you showed a little appreciation." Marcus's expression never changed. "Appreciation?" Daniel lowered his voice until only Marcus could hear. "Protection isn't free." Outside, traffic continued flowing as though nothing unusual was happening. Inside, the humming refrigeration units became the loudest sound in the room. Marcus slowly lifted his eyes. Not angry, not frightened, simply observant. For a brief second, Daniel felt something he couldn't explain. It wasn't resistance. It wasn't fear. It was the unsettling feeling that the man standing across from him wasn't reacting the way every other store owner always did. Marcus reached beneath the counter. Daniel's grin widened. "Now we're talking." Instead of cash, Marcus placed a simple paper receipt onto the countertop. "I believe every transaction should leave a record." Daniel laughed loudly enough for the empty aisles to echo. "You really have no idea who you're dealing with." Marcus looked directly into his eyes for the first time that morning. His voice remained almost gentle. "No, officer." A quiet pause settled between them. "I believe only one of us doesn't know that." Neither man noticed the tiny indicator light inside one of the security cameras blink from steady blue to solid red. Somewhere far beyond Maple Avenue, someone had just begun recording. The moment fear becomes routine, injustice no longer needs to knock on the door. It simply walks in wearing a badge. For years, Maple Avenue had learned to survive by saying as little as possible. Every Thursday morning, conversations grew shorter. Shop owners glanced through their windows more often than they served their customers. Parents quietly urged their children to stay close whenever a black and white patrol car appeared at the end of the block. No official warning had ever been issued, yet everyone understood the unwritten schedule better than any city ordinance. Officer Daniel Brooks was coming. The city records described him as a decorated patrol officer with an impressive arrest record and nearly 15 years of service. His supervisors praised his initiative. His reports were always complete. His appearance was spotless. To those who only saw paperwork, Daniel looked like the kind of officer every department wanted. The neighborhood knew another version, one that never appeared in official files. Businesses that cooperated rarely received surprise inspections. Parking violations somehow disappeared. Anonymous complaints were quietly forgotten. Those who refused found themselves drowning in citations, unexpected health inspections, or suspicious police visits that frightened away customers for days. Nobody could prove anything. That was Daniel's greatest weapon. Fear left no receipts. Across the street, Mrs. Linda Foster watched through the window of her flower shop as Daniel remained inside Carter's Market longer than usual. She instinctively reached for the small wooden cross hanging around her neck. "He should just pay," she whispered to herself. "It's cheaper." Inside the market, Marcus Carter calmly stocked fresh bread onto wooden shelves, as though the conversation from moments earlier had never happened. His movements were slow, almost peaceful. Every loaf was placed perfectly straight. Every price tag aligned with quiet precision. Daniel found the composure irritating. Most people avoided eye contact after he raised his voice. Marcus had done the opposite. He simply continued working. "You think silence makes you brave?" Daniel asked. Marcus adjusted another loaf before answering. "No." "Then what does?" Marcus smiled politely, knowing when someone wants a reaction more than the truth. The words landed harder than Daniel expected. He took 2 deliberate steps closer until only the checkout counter separated them. "You own this place." "I do." "You'd hate to lose it." Marcus nodded once. "I imagine anyone would." Daniel rested both hands on the counter. "You know what happens when businesses become safety concerns." Marcus looked toward the front windows where sunlight spilled across the polished floor. "I know what happens when people abuse authority." For the first time that morning, neither man spoke. Only the soft hum of the refrigerators filled the silence. Behind the checkout area, a digital clock quietly changed from 8:43 to 8:44. Outside, an elderly delivery driver parked beside the building and unloaded crates of bottled water. Before entering, he glanced toward Marcus through the glass. Their eyes met for only a fraction of a second. A nearly invisible nod. Nothing more. The driver carried the boxes inside, exchanged a brief greeting, and left without purchasing anything. Daniel barely noticed him. Marcus did. As the delivery truck disappeared around the corner, Marcus's attention shifted briefly toward one of the security monitors mounted beneath the counter. Multiple camera angles displayed every aisle, every entrance, every movement inside the store. One tiny notification flashed across the corner of the screen. "Secure upload complete." It vanished almost instantly. Daniel never saw it. He reached into his pocket, removed a folded envelope, and slid it across the counter. "I'll be back tomorrow." His voice carried the confidence of a man who believed. Every ending had already been written. "I expect respect." Marcus glanced at the envelope, but made no attempt to touch it. Instead, he quietly looked back at Daniel. "Respect," he said softly, "is usually earned before it's demanded." Daniel chuckled, turned toward the exit, and pushed open the door without another word. The bell above the entrance rang once. Then silence returned. Marcus remained perfectly still until the patrol car disappeared beyond the intersection. Only then did he unlock the drawer beneath the register. Inside lay no cash, no personal belongings, only a government-issued identification wallet, a sealed federal case file marked confidential, and a secure phone that had just begun to vibrate. Some people mistake patience for weakness. They never realize patience can also be evidence. Marcus waited until the market was empty before answering the secure phone. "This is Carter." A calm female voice responded immediately. "Status update." "He came earlier than expected." "Did he make another demand?" "Yes." "Did he threaten you?" Marcus looked toward the front window, watching Daniel's patrol car disappear into the morning traffic. "Not directly, but he made sure I understood the consequences." A brief silence followed. Then the voice asked the only question that truly mattered. Was everything captured? Marcus glanced toward the security monitor. Every second. Good. The call ended without another word. Marcus locked the phone inside the drawer again, beside the leather identification wallet that remained hidden beneath the federal case file. To anyone else, the drawer looked ordinary. To Marcus, it held months of careful preparation. Outside, Maple Avenue slowly returned to life. Mrs. Foster reopened her flower shop. Children laughed again on the sidewalk. Customers cautiously stepped back into Carter's Market as if nothing unusual had happened. That was exactly what Marcus wanted. Normal routines hid extraordinary truths. Around noon, a young cashier named Jasmine approached him while organizing canned soup. Mr. Carter? Yes. Why don't you report him? Marcus continued checking inventory without looking up. What makes you think? Nobody has. She hesitated. Everyone says officers protect each other. Marcus placed another box onto the shelf. Sometimes they do. And sometimes good people inside the system are waiting for the right moment. Jasmine frowned. So why wait? Because accusations can be denied. He gently tapped one of the security cameras mounted above the aisle. Evidence can't. She followed his eyes toward the camera. You installed all these yourself? Marcus smiled. I believe every business owner should know what's happening inside his own store. It sounded like an ordinary answer. It wasn't. Every camera recorded to 3 separate encrypted locations. Every conversation was automatically timestamped. Every visit was preserved. Nothing depended on memory. Across town, Officer Daniel Brooks leaned back in his chair inside the precinct, laughing with 2 fellow officers over stale coffee. That grocery guy still thinks he's smarter than everybody. One officer shrugged. He giving you trouble? Daniel smirked. He'll learn. The conversation drifted to football, weekend plans, and overtime shifts. No one noticed Daniel quietly slide a thick envelope into the bottom drawer of his desk before standing to answer a routine dispatch call. Hidden habits often looked invisible to the people performing them. Miles away, inside a federal office building with no public signs, a large monitor illuminated a dim conference room. Several investigators sat around a polished table. On the screen appeared a familiar image. Officer Daniel Brooks, standing inside Carter's Market, demanding money, speaking confidently, believing no one beyond those walls would ever hear his words. A technician paused the recording. Audio quality, crystal clear. Another investigator reviewed a growing digital timeline. Subject has followed the same pattern for 11 consecutive Thursdays. Financial connections? We're still tracing them. The room fell quiet as another file appeared beside Daniel's name. Then another, and another. One investigator looked toward the empty chair at the head of the table. When does Carter arrive? The answer came with quiet certainty. He'll be here after closing. No one in the room referred to him as a shop owner. They spoke about him as the person everyone else was waiting for. The people who abuse power usually make the same mistake. They think yesterday's success guarantees tomorrow's obedience. Friday arrived with dark clouds gathering over Jackson. The air felt heavier than usual. Rain had not yet fallen, but the wind carried the unmistakable promise of a storm. At exactly 9:12 a.m., Officer Daniel Brooks parked outside Carter's Market for the second day in a row. That alone caught the neighborhood's attention. He never came on Fridays. Mrs. Foster noticed first. The barber paused halfway through a haircut. Across the street, customers quietly stepped aside, pretending to examine storefront windows while keeping one eye on the patrol car. Something was different. Daniel stepped inside without removing his sunglasses. The familiar bell above the entrance rang once. Marcus looked up from helping an elderly customer carry groceries. Good morning. Daniel ignored the greeting. He waited until the customer left before walking toward the register. I gave you an opportunity yesterday. Marcus folded the customer's receipt. I remember. And yet you chose to be difficult. I chose not to participate. Daniel leaned closer. You really don't understand how this works. Marcus met his gaze without raising his voice. Then explain it. A faint smile appeared on Daniel's face. When I decide a business becomes a problem, inspectors start showing up. He pointed toward the shelves. Licenses, safety codes, health violations, parking complaints. I can bury this place in paperwork before next week. Marcus listened quietly. You've thought about this before. I've done it before. The confidence in Daniel's voice echoed through the nearly empty store. Near the beverage aisle, a college student browsing bottled water lowered his head, pretending not to listen. An elderly man paused beside the freezer section. Nobody interrupted. Nobody spoke. Fear had taught everyone to become invisible. Daniel reached toward a display of canned vegetables and deliberately knocked several onto the floor. Metal rolled across, the tiles with sharp, hollow echoes. One can struck the checkout counter before spinning to a stop. "Looks unsafe," Daniel said with a grin. Marcus slowly bent down. One by one, he picked up each can. He dusted them off. Rest-tacked them, perfectly aligned. His heartbeat never showed on his face. The silence irritated Daniel more than any argument could have. "Aren't you angry?" Marcus placed the final can back on the shelf. "Would it help? It might make you feel better." "I'm not interested in feeling better." "What are you interested in?" Marcus looked toward the front windows where the first drops of rain finally struck the glass. "The truth." "For just a moment," Daniel laughed. "Truth. People believe whoever wears the badge." Marcus answered almost immediately. "Only until they see the evidence." The words lingered. Daniel's smile faded again. He reached into his notebook, tore out a blank citation form, and placed it on the counter. "I'm scheduling a complete inspection. I'll find something." Marcus glanced at the unsigned document. "Or you won't." Daniel jabbed a finger against the paper. "You still think you're protected?" Marcus shook his head. "No. I think everyone is accountable." Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Daniel grabbed the blank citation, stuffed it back into his pocket, and headed toward the exit. Before leaving, he stopped without turning around. "You've got one last chance." Marcus answered softly. "I think that's true." Daniel walked out, believing the warning belonged to Marcus. Behind the counter, Marcus quietly watched the patrol car disappear through the rain. Then he looked up at the security camera. Its red recording light remained steady. Every word, every threat, every deliberate act, preserved exactly as it happened. Somewhere inside the federal office, another timestamp quietly appeared on an expanding case file that was becoming impossible to ignore. The strongest traps are the ones their targets never recognize. They look exactly like ordinary days. By late afternoon, Carter's Market looked no different from any other neighborhood grocery store. Children spent their allowance on candy. A construction worker grabbed a bottle of water before heading home. An elderly couple debated which brand of coffee tasted better. Life moved at its familiar pace. Marcus Carter greeted every customer with the same quiet warmth, never allowing the weight of the past 2 days to appear on his face. If anyone had watched him closely, they would have seen nothing unusual. That was intentional. Normality was part of the plan. At precisely 6:17 p.m., the front door opened again. This time it wasn't Officer Brooks. A man wearing a gray delivery uniform rolled a hand truck carrying 2 sealed boxes. "Evening delivery." Marcus checked the invoice without hesitation. "Storage room, please." The delivery driver nodded once. No words beyond that. Inside the stockroom, away from customers and security mirrors, the driver placed the boxes on a metal shelf. Marcus closed the door behind them. Neither man shook hands. Neither introduced himself. The driver simply slipped a small encrypted flash drive onto the shelf beside the invoice. "Everything from Thursday uploaded successfully," he said quietly. Marcus picked up the drive. "No interruptions?" "None." "The backup servers?" "3 copies." Marcus gave a slight nod. "Good." The driver looked toward the closed door. "Headquarters reviewed yesterday's recording. And they're satisfied." Marcus remained silent. "The timeline is complete." The driver lowered his voice even further. "Unless Brooks makes another mistake." Marcus carefully placed the flash drive into a locked cabinet. "He will." "You sound certain." Marcus looked toward the ceiling, where the faint outline of another concealed camera blended into the light fixture. People who believe they're untouchable usually become less careful, not more. Minutes later, the driver left through the rear exit carrying an empty dolly. To anyone watching from outside, it had been nothing more than a routine grocery delivery. Across town, however, a very different meeting was taking place. Inside the federal office building, investigators enlarged a digital map of Jackson across a conference room screen. Colored markers connected businesses, patrol routes, financial records, and officer assignments. Officer Daniel Brooks' name sat at the center. One investigator adjusted his glasses. "The pattern is expanding." Another opened a financial report. We've identified payments connected to 5 separate businesses. Enough for charges? Not yet. The room grew quiet. One missing piece still separated suspicion from certainty. Intent. Then another video file appeared on the monitor. Brooks. Inside Carter's Market. Threatening inspections. Damaging merchandise. Making promises he had no lawful authority to make. No one spoke while the footage played. Finally, the senior analyst broke the silence. He doesn't realize he's documenting the case against himself. Back at the market, Marcus locked the front door as the final customer stepped outside. Rainwater reflected the streetlights like scattered glass across the pavement. He switched off the aisle lights one row at a time. Only the office remained illuminated. Inside, he opened a worn notebook. Instead of recording inventory, he wrote a single sentence beneath today's date. Subject growing more aggressive. Predict escalation. He closed the notebook. Outside, hidden beneath the glow of a distant street lamp, a familiar patrol car slowed almost to a stop before continuing down Maple Avenue. Daniel Brooks believed he was deciding when the next confrontation would happen. He never imagined that every move he made was bringing someone else closer to the moment they had been patiently preparing for all along. Justice rarely announces its arrival. More often, it waits until arrogance opens the door for it. Saturday morning broke with clear skies, as though the previous day's storm had washed every cloud from Mississippi. Maple Avenue looked peaceful again. Marcus unlocked Carter's Market at exactly 7 o'clock. He brewed fresh coffee for the early customers, arranged baskets of fruit near the entrance, and greeted every familiar face with the same steady smile. Nothing in his routine suggested that, within a few hours, one of the most important meetings of the investigation would take place. At precisely 10 o'clock, Marcus locked the office door behind him and opened the secure phone. A video conference connected almost instantly. 3 faces appeared on the screen. Special Agent Rebecca Lawson, Financial Crimes Supervisor Thomas Reed, Assistant U.S. Attorney Evelyn Grant. No introductions were necessary. Rebecca spoke first. Good morning, Marcus. Morning. The latest recording has been reviewed. Marcus waited. Thomas leaned forward. Brooks is becoming predictable. He already was. Rebecca nodded. That's what concerns us. Marcus understood immediately. When people stop hiding, they start making mistakes. Exactly. Evelyn opened a digital folder. We now have evidence of intimidation, attempted coercion, abuse of official authority, and property damage. Marcus remained thoughtful. Enough for prosecution? Enough to continue. She paused, but not enough to expose everyone connected to him. Silence settled over the meeting. This had never been about one corrupt officer. Marcus had accepted the assignment nearly 8 months earlier because investigators suspected something larger. One dishonest patrol officer rarely operated alone. Rebecca finally broke the silence. Your undercover status remains secure. Marcus gave a slight smile. I wouldn't be too confident. What makes you say that? He came back twice, and each visit was more aggressive. Thomas frowned. You think he's suspicious? No. Marcus looked directly into the camera. I think he's becoming comfortable. There was a difference. Comfort often destroyed careful criminals. Rebecca closed her notebook. Then we stay patient. Marcus nodded. We've waited 8 months. We can wait a little longer. Across town, Officer Daniel Brooks was enjoying breakfast at a neighborhood diner with another patrol officer. He laughed loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. That grocery owner still thinks he's teaching me lessons. His partner raised an eyebrow. You planning another visit? Daniel stirred his coffee. I don't like unfinished conversations. What if he files a complaint? Daniel smiled without concern. Against who? The police? Both officers laughed. Neither noticed a man seated quietly in the corner booth reading a newspaper. The newspaper remained open. The man's attention did not. A tiny earpiece rested beneath his collar. Without lifting his eyes, he spoke softly enough that only his concealed microphone captured the words. Subject confirms future contact. He turned one page of the newspaper. Confidence level remains extremely high. Several miles away, the message appeared instantly inside the Federal Operations Center. Rebecca looked toward Marcus on the conference screen. You were right. Marcus wasn't surprised. He believes he's choosing the next move. Outside Carter's Market, children chased each other along the sidewalk while neighbors exchanged weekend greetings. Life continued as though nothing extraordinary was unfolding. But hidden behind ordinary conversations, grocery deliveries, and routine patrols, every piece was quietly sliding into place. And somewhere deep inside Officer Daniel Brooks' confidence, the first invisible crack had already begun to form, though he was still far too certain of himself to hear it. The final mistake is rarely the biggest one. It is simply the one made after someone believes they can no longer fail. Monday arrived with the confidence of routine. Officer Daniel Brooks began his shift exactly as he had hundreds of times before. He signed the duty log, collected his patrol keys, accepted a fresh cup of coffee from the break room. Nothing suggested that this ordinary morning would quietly alter the course of his career. Across town, Marcus Carter unlocked Carter's Market before sunrise. As always, the lights came on one section at a time. Fresh produce filled the entrance. Coffee brewed behind the counter. The security system completed its automatic diagnostic. Every camera displayed a green status indicator. Every encrypted recorder synchronized with the remote servers. Marcus glanced briefly at the monitor. Everything was ready. At 10:41 a.m., the familiar patrol car rolled slowly into the parking lot. Daniel stepped out wearing the same relaxed confidence that had carried him through years of unanswered misconduct. He entered without hesitation. The bell above the door chimed softly. Marcus looked up. "Good morning, officer." Daniel smiled. "I've been thinking." Marcus waited. "You were right about one thing." "Oh, I should have finished this sooner." Without another word, Daniel removed an official inspection notice from his folder and placed it across the counter. The document bore departmental letterhead. Several violations had already been checked. Most had never been inspected. Marcus calmly read the first page. Then the second. He looked back at Daniel. "Interesting." Daniel folded his arms. "You've got 48 hours before I recommend suspending your business license." Customers standing nearby exchanged uneasy glances. No one interrupted. Fear still encouraged silence. Marcus gently placed the paperwork back onto the counter. "I have one question." Daniel smirked. "You don't get to ask questions." "I think this one matters." Daniel shrugged. "Fine." Marcus looked directly into his eyes. "Did you complete an actual inspection before writing these violations?" For the first time, Daniel hesitated. Only for a heartbeat. Then he answered, "I don't need your permission to do my job." Marcus nodded slowly. "I wasn't asking for permission. I was asking for the truth." Daniel leaned closer. "The truth is whatever ends up in my report." The sentence hung in the quiet store. A young mother holding her son's hand looked down at the floor. The cashier froze beside the register. Even the humming refrigerators seemed louder. Marcus quietly reached beneath the counter. Daniel's expression sharpened. "What are you doing?" Marcus placed a small digital recorder beside the inspection notice. The recording light glowed steadily. "It helps me remember conversations." Daniel laughed. "You think that's going to scare me?" "No." Marcus's voice remained calm. "I think honesty shouldn't fear documentation." Daniel picked up the inspection notice and tapped it against the counter. "You've just made things worse." He turned and walked toward the exit without looking back. The door closed behind him. The patrol car disappeared into traffic once again. Inside the market, Marcus picked up the digital recorder and switched it off. He placed it beside the secure phone. Seconds later, the phone vibrated. One message appeared. "Authorization approved." Marcus read it only once before locking the screen. He stood silently in the empty office, looking at the inspection notice lying on his desk. Then he opened the federal case file. For months, he had been gathering evidence. For weeks, he had been waiting for certainty. Now, for the first time, the investigation had crossed an invisible line. The trap was no longer being built. It was ready to close. The moment truth steps into the light, deception loses the luxury of confidence. Tuesday morning began like every other day inside Carter's Market. Fresh bread filled the air with warmth. Customers drifted through the aisles. The register chimed steadily. Nothing suggested that the ordinary routine was only minutes away from ending. At exactly 10 a.m., Marcus received a brief message on his secure phone. "Proceed." One word. Nothing more. He slipped the phone into his pocket and continued stocking a shelf of canned vegetables as if he had not seen it. Outside, 3 unmarked SUVs quietly turned onto Maple Avenue. They did not activate sirens. They did not draw attention. They simply parked several storefronts away. Inside the lead vehicle, Special Agent Rebecca Lawson reviewed the final authorization. Search warrants, financial records, recorded evidence, department approvals. Every signature had been secured. She looked at the team around her. No unnecessary attention. Everyone nodded. This ends professionally. Across the street, Officer Daniel Brooks noticed the vehicles while completing paperwork inside his patrol car. He frowned. Federal plates. For a brief moment, curiosity crossed his face. Then he dismissed it. Whatever they were doing had nothing to do with him. Confidence often survives longest when it has never been challenged. Marcus glanced through the front window. The SUVs remained still. He checked the wall clock. 10:04. Right on schedule. The bell above the entrance rang. Daniel walked inside once again. His expression carried the same familiar certainty. I've come to collect those inspection documents. Marcus folded a receipt. They're ready. Daniel stepped toward the counter. Good. Before Marcus could answer, the entrance opened again. This time, 4 men and 2 women entered together. Business attire. Federal credentials displayed openly. The conversations inside the market faded into silence. Rebecca Lawson approached the counter with calm professionalism. Good morning. Daniel turned. Can I help you? Rebecca produced her identification. Special Agent Rebecca Lawson. Daniel straightened immediately. Federal investigation? Yes. He glanced around the store. Is there a problem here? Rebecca looked at Marcus. Mr. Carter. Marcus gave a small nod. Good morning, Agent. Daniel frowned. You two know each other? Marcus answered quietly. We've worked together for quite some time. Confusion replaced Daniel's confidence. Rebecca continued. Officer Brooks, we need a private conversation. Daniel forced a smile. About what? Instead of answering, Rebecca handed him a sealed document. He opened it. His eyes moved across the first page. Then the second. The color slowly disappeared from his face. Administrative investigation. Preservation order. Notice of recorded evidence. Witness coordination. Daniel looked back toward Marcus. What is this? For the first time since they had met, Marcus reached into the office drawer and removed the leather identification wallet that had remained hidden for months. He placed it carefully on the counter. The federal credential rested beside the badge inside. Daniel stared at it without speaking. Marcus met his eyes with the same calm expression he had carried from the beginning. My name is Marcus Carter. A brief silence settled across the room. I've been serving as the undercover lead assigned to this investigation. No anger. No triumph. Only truth. Customers stood frozen. The cashier covered her mouth. Mrs. Foster, watching through the front window, slowly lowered the flowers she had been carrying. Daniel looked from the credential to the security cameras overhead, then back to Marcus. His voice barely escaped. All this time, Marcus nodded once. Every conversation. He glanced toward the red recording lights that had quietly watched every visit, every threat, another pause, every choice. For the first time in years, Officer Daniel Brooks understood something that power had hidden from him. He had never been the one in control. Justice is not measured by the volume of a verdict. It is measured by the silence that follows when the truth no longer has to defend itself. Within hours of the meeting at Carter's Market, the investigation moved from secrecy to accountability. Search warrants were executed. Financial records were secured. Digital evidence was cataloged. Every recording collected over the previous 8 months was transferred into evidence under a documented chain of custody. Nothing relied on rumor. Everything relied on proof. Officer Daniel Brooks was placed on administrative leave while the investigation continued. His badge was surrendered. His service weapon was turned in. For the first time in years, the authority he had worn so confidently no longer belonged to him. Inside the Federal Operations Center, investigators reviewed the final collection of recordings one last time. The room remained quiet. No one celebrated. Professionalism left little space for triumph. Rebecca Lawson closed the final evidence folder. We have what we need. Assistant U.S. Attorney Evelyn Grant nodded. The decisions from this point forward belonged to the court. Marcus simply listened. Months of patience had reached the moment he had imagined countless times. Yet he felt no satisfaction in another man's downfall. Only relief that the truth no longer needed to hide. Several days later, Carter's Market reopened under its ordinary routine. Children still bought candy after school. Neighbors still stopped to talk outside the entrance. Mrs. Foster once again carried flowers through the front door with a warm smile. The grocery store had never been the story. The people inside it had been. Jasmine, the young cashier who had watched everything unfold, looked at Marcus while organizing receipts. I kept waiting for you to fight back. Marcus smiled gently. I wasn't waiting to fight. What were you waiting for? He glanced toward the familiar security cameras mounted above the aisles. For the truth to become strong enough that it could speak for itself. She looked around. The peaceful store. It finally did. Marcus nodded. It always could. People just needed to hear it. Outside, life on Maple Avenue continued much as it always had. Traffic flowed. Customers came and went. Nothing about the street suggested that one quiet grocery store had helped uncover months of official misconduct. That was fitting. Justice rarely announces itself with applause. More often, it restores ordinary life so completely that peace becomes almost invisible. Before leaving that evening, Marcus stood alone beneath the red recording light that had witnessed every conversation from the beginning. He reached up and switched the system from active investigation mode back to standard business recording. One small light changed color. The assignment was over. The grocery store remained. As he locked the front door, the evening sun reflected across the windows where fear had once lingered. Now they reflected only the neighborhood itself. Marcus paused for a final moment before walking toward his car. He had spent months pretending to be an ordinary shop owner. In many ways, he realized he truly was one. His profession had uncovered corruption. His character had protected dignity. And in the end, those were never the same thing. Because badges may command authority, but integrity earns trust. Power can silence people for a season. Evidence can silence deception forever. And when justice finally arrives, it rarely comes to humiliate anyone. It simply allows the truth to stand where fear once did.